Hello again and welcome back to Math with Miss Mac, and we are still in our polynomials unit. We're moving on to lesson number 2, which is about multiplying polynomials. If you don't have access to the worksheet that we're going to be doing, please click the link down below. You're also free to write down the problems as needed. But before we get into the lesson, we have to do some housekeeping, which is our vocabulary as normal. So first word is a monomial, which is an expression with one term. The second word is binomial, which is an expression with only two terms. And as you can probably see, there's a trend here. The third word is trinomial, which is an expression with three terms. So now that we're done with vocabulary, please go ahead and take out the worksheet if you have it. All right, so before we start this lesson, we're just going to need to review one of the properties of exponents. So when you multiply variables with the same base, you need to add the exponent. So let's go ahead and fill in that blank. And now we're going to get into part A. We need to use that property that we just spoke about to do part A. So we have to multiply each monomial. So before we do that, I'm just going to write it out bigger so you guys can see what I'm going to be doing. So we have negative 3x squared times 4x squared. So the things that you have to remember is that like goes with like. Numbers go with numbers, and variables go with variables. So x's will go with x's. So we just have to multiply the numbers together. So negative 3 times 4 would give me negative 12. And then the variables, we do x squared times x squared. Remember, we keep the base the same. We just have to add the exponent. So 2 plus 2 is 4. So x squared times x squared is going to be x to the fourth power. Let me just get all that stuff out the way. And let's do the next problem. Again, I'm going to write it big so you guys can see what's going on. So I have 5x times 2x to the fourth power. Same thing applies. Numbers go with numbers. So 5 times 2 is 10. I'm just going to write that out. And now this one is different. That first x that we have does not have an exponent. So when we don't have an exponent, there's always an invisible or an imaginary 1 there. All right, so when I multiply x times x to the fourth, I have to add the exponents. So 1 plus 4 is 5. So x times x to the fourth power is x to the fifth. And now we're going to do the last problem. This one has more variables. So remember, numbers go with numbers, x's go with x's, and y's goes with y's. So let me go ahead and get everything out the way, rewrite the problem so we can see it a lot better. Change it to black. So now I have 6x y to the third times negative 4xy to the fourth power. So remember, numbers go with numbers. 6 times negative 4 is negative 24. X's go with x's. So remember what I said, if you don't have an exponent next to that variable, there's an imaginary 1. So we have two imaginary 1s, so x times x is x to the second power. And now we have to deal with our y's. Y to the third times y to the fourth power would be y to the seventh power. All right, so let's move on to the next problem. All right, so now we need to find each product by using the distributive property. So I'm going to write it out big so we can see what's going on. 2x plus 1. So basically, we have to take that number that's directly in front of the parentheses. So this 5x, and we have to distribute it or multiply it to everything on the inside. All right, so just like we practiced in part A, we're going to be doing 5x times 2x. Numbers go with numbers. Variables or x's go with x's. So 5 times 2 is 10. Let me change that, sorry. So 5 times 2 is 10. And x times x is x squared. So remember, there's an invisible 1, right? And now we have to do 5x times 1. And that's going to be, well, 5 times 1 is 5. And this 1 does not have a variable, so we're just going to keep the variable from the original part. We're going to keep that x, and that's going to be our answer. 10x squared plus 5x. think you guys are getting the hang of it. So let's just continue with question number 2. I'm not going to rewrite it. So now we have x to the third times 3x. Remember, numbers go with numbers, x's go with x's. So we're essentially multiplying 1 times 3, which is 3. X to the third times x is going to be x to the fourth. Remember that there's an invisible 1 right here. And now we have to take that x to the third power and multiply it by negative 2. And that's just going to simply be negative 2x to the third power. All right, so number 3, now we got 2 variables going on. Hopefully shouldn't be that difficult right now. So we have to take the number on the outside and multiply it by everything on the inside. So we're going to do negative 2 times 4, which gives us negative 8. And then x times x, which would be x squared. And then we just have y's to the second power. We don't have to multiply it by anything, so we're just going to keep it. And now we have to do the same thing. So negative 2xy to the second power times negative 6. And all we really have to worry about is the numbers. So negative 2 times negative 6 is positive 12. And we're just going to keep the variables the same. And we are done with that one. Last question. All right, so now let's take this piece by piece. Remember, x's go with x's, y's goes with y's. All right, and z's go with z's. So x to the third power times negative x is going to be negative x to the fourth. Remember, we're keeping the variable and adding the exponents. All right, y to the second power times y is going to be y to the third. So we're done with that. Now we got to multiply the second term. There are no numbers. It's only just a 2 to multiply, so we're just going to keep that 2 there because 2 times 1 is 2. And we're going to deal with the x's. So x to the third times x to the second power is x to the fifth. And now we do the y's. Y to the second power times y to the third power is also y to the fifth. And we only have one z, so we're just going to attach that on, and that is our answer. All right, so now I want you to try these 4 problems on your own. They're just like the problems that we just did. So remember, numbers go with numbers, x's go with x's, and y's goes with y's. So please take a second, pause the video, try it on your own, and then we'll go over it together. Okay, so problem number 1. So remember, numbers go with numbers. So 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Oh, what happened with that? All right, so 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. And then x to the third times x to the fourth will be x to the seventh. And y times y to the fifth is y to the sixth. Remember, there's an invisible 1 in front. Invisible 1 as an exponent for the y. Question number 2. So numbers go with numbers. We have that negative times that 5, which will give us negative 5. X to the third times nothing because there is no x's in that second set. So I'm just going to keep my x to the third. And then y to the second times y to the second is going to be y to the fourth. Question number 3, we're going to be distributing that 6xy to everything on the inside. So let's start with the numbers. 6 times 8 is 48. X, and the 8 doesn't have any variables, so I'm just going to attach what was originally there, which is the xy. Now to the second term, which is negative 3xy. 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. X times x is x squared. And y times y is y squared. Now last question, question number 4. So we have the negative in front, so negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. X to the third times x is x to the fourth. Y to the fourth times y is y to the fifth. And now we have that negative 1 in front here times negative 8, which is going to give us positive 8 or just plus 8. X to the third times x to the second power is x to the fifth. And x to the fourth times x to the third is y to the seventh. And we are done. All right, so now we're going to get into the fun stuff. We're now going to be multiplying binomials. So we're going to start at part C, and then we'll get into an alternative method with part D. So in order to multiply binomials, most people use FOIL. And FOIL just stands for first, outer, inner, and then last. That is just a helpful way to memorize the order in which you're going to multiply your terms. It's just another form of distribution. So we're going to multiply this polynomial here, 3x minus 6, and then 2x plus 7. So we're going to start out with the first term. So we're just starting out with the numbers that appear first in both sets of parentheses. So that's my first. So 3x times 2x is 6x squared. Then we're going to do the outer parts. So 3x times 7. And that's just going to be plus 21x. Then we have to do our inner. So that's negative 6 times 2x, which will be negative 12x. And then we need to do our last, the last term that appear in the terms. So negative 6 times 7, which would be negative 42. So now all we have to do after this is combine our like terms, which goes into what we were doing in the first lesson, which would just be combining our like terms and writing our answer in standard form. So my like terms are the 21x and the negative 12x. So our final answer, when you combine those, you'll have 6x to the second power, and then plus 9x minus 42. And just to tie in what we did before, our degree would be 2, our leading term would be 6x squared, and our leading coefficient would be 6. All right, so now we're going to do the same problem, different method. This is the table method. You may like it, you may not, but I'm just going to show different ways so you have the option. All right, so we're going to make, the box is already provided for you, but I made a 2x2 box because we're multiplying binomials, which have 2 terms. So what you are going to do is take one of your binomials and write it up top of the boxes. So I have 3x and then minus 6. And then down the side here, you're going to write the next binomial, which is 2x plus 7. What I like about this method is that you can kind of pick and choose the order in which you like to multiply. You don't have to do it like FOIL, which is, kind of rigid. You can pick and choose what you want to do. So say, for instance, I wanted to fill in that box. I just have to line up my terms. So for that box, I'm going to be multiplying 3x times 7. So 3x times 7 is 21x. Let's try another one. If I wanted to get what's in this box, I would be multiplying these 2 terms. So negative 6 times 2x is negative 12x. And if I wanted to get what's here, I'm multiplying negative 6 and positive 7, which would give me negative 42. And as you guys can probably guess, if I wanted to get that last box, I'm multiplying 3x and 2x. And that would give me 6x squared. All right, so notice that in all 4 boxes, it matches exactly to the terms that we got when we use FOIL. It's just in a different order. Another thing I do like about this particular method is that all your like terms are going to be on the diagonal. So what I mean by that is that if I draw a diagonal going through here, I can just bring down my like term, which only one of them, so I don't have to combine anything. So that's 6x squared. All right, and now let's do these 2. So I'll be adding negative 12x and 21x, and when you add those 2 things, you get positive 9x. And then my negative 42, you're just going to bring that down because there is nothing to combine it with, and you just keep your negative 42. So your answer is just going to be what you get on the side here, which will be the same thing that we got when we used FOIL, which would be 6x squared plus 9x minus 42. So two different ways and the same answer. You can pick and choose what you're comfortable with. So go ahead and flip the page over and try to do the next question. All right, so now I'm gonna show you guys two different ways to do it. So if you just did it using FOIL, you can pay attention to when I'm using FOIL and fast forward when I'm demonstrating the table method. If you prefer the table method, you can just hold on a second until I finish with FOIL and I'll show you how to do the table method. All right, so for FOIL, I'm just going to write out the problem so we can do it. And n plus 1. So remember, f is for first. So first is 7n and n. So 7n times n is 7n squared. Then we are going to be doing the outer. So 7n times 1 is going to be 7n. Then we're going to be doing our inner, which is negative 7 and n. So negative 7 times n is negative 7n. And then our last terms, which is going to be negative 7 and positive 1, which would give me negative 7. So now all we have to do is combine our like terms. And normally when we're multiplying binomials using the FOIL method, our like terms will be in the center. So for this particular problem, notice that our like terms are opposites of each other. So 7n minus 7n will just be 0. So these would cancel out to 0. And we'll be left with 7n squared minus 7. Done. So now I'm going to do the same problem using the table method. I have to create a 2 by 2 table because we are multiplying binomials. It's not going to be perfect, but here we go. Cool. So now I'm going to write one of my binomials at the top. So 7n minus 7, and then my other one down the side. So n plus 1. All right, and remember, order does not matter for this one. So if I was going to multiply and get something that's in this box, I'm just lining it up. So I'd have negative 7 and positive 1. All right, so negative 7 times positive 1 is negative 7. If I wanted to get something that's in this box, I'm going here and here. So that would be 7n squared. If I wanted to get what's here, I'm multiplying here and here. So negative 7 times n is negative 7n. And my last box is just going to be these two. So 7n times 1. And that's just going to be 7n. So notice again, all the terms that we got here is exactly what was represented in FOIL. Our like terms are going to be on the diagonal. So we just draw some arrows. All right, so starting with that first arrow, there is nothing to combine the 7n squared with, so we leave it. This negative 7n and 7n are 0 pairs, so that just becomes 0. And then we just bring down that negative 7. There is nothing to combine it with. Our answer is on the side. And that's all we have to write. So 7n squared minus 7. And we're done. Notice, same answer, two different methods. You can pick whichever method that you're comfortable with. All right, so now we're up to example E and F. And just like the other examples, we're just going to focus on one of them at a time. So we're going to start with part E and then move on to part F. So now we're multiplying a binomial by a trinomial. There is no fancy acronym for this, but we just have to remember that everything must get distributed. So let's start out with that 5x. I'm going to take that 5x and multiply it to everything inside the trinomial. All right, so we do 5x times 5x squared, which would be 25x to the third power. 5x times negative 5x, which would be negative 25x squared. And then we're going to do 5x times 2, which would be plus 10x. All right, so let's get rid of everything up top there. We're going to do the same exact thing for the 3. So we're going to take that 3, positive 3, and multiply it to have everything on inside the trinomial. Okay, so 3 times 15x squared, 3 times 5x squared is going to be 15x squared. 3 times negative 5x is going to be negative 15x. And then 3 times 2 is positive 6. All right, so now we have a bunch of terms, and we have to combine our like terms, making sure to keep our answer in standard form at the end. All right, so there is no easy way to organize this at this moment, so we're just going to go ahead and go through it like we did in lesson number 1. So I'm going to start and look for my term that has the highest degree, which is this one here, that 25x to the third, so we're going to write that down first. And like I did in the other video, when I'm done with something, I cross it out. So now I'm going to go down to my x squareds, and this is an x squared, and that is an x squared. So negative 25x squared plus 15x squared is going to be negative 10x squared. And I'm done with those, cross them out. And now I'm going to move on to my x's. So 10x minus 15x would give you negative 5x. Cross those out. And now I'm left with my constant, so plus 6. So just to tie everything back in, my degree is 3, my leading term is 25x to the third, and my leading coefficient is 25. So now I'm going to do part F. This is not the same example that we did in part E, but it should suffice in terms of explaining how to multiply a binomial by a trinomial. So first things first, I'm going to put my trinomial at the top. So I have 3x squared plus 3x minus 5. And then down the side, I'm going to have x minus 2. All right, and same thing applies. You can start anywhere that you'd like, just lining up the numbers. If I started here, multiplying negative 5 and negative 2. All right, and I'm just going to go ahead and go through it. So negative 5 times negative 2 is 10. Going to move to the left here. So 3x times negative 2 is negative 6x. Moving over again to the left. 3x squared times negative 2 is negative 6x squared. Moving up. 3x squared times x is 3x to the third power. Moving over to the right, 3x times x is 3x squared. And my last box, negative 5 times x is negative 5x. This is kind of where I like the table method because our like terms are neatly organized. So I'm going to go ahead and make my arrows. So just making the arrows down the diagonal. All right. Same thing like the first example we did with the table method. The 3x to the third power, there is nothing else to combine it with, so we're just going to bring that down. Sorry, let me erase that. Matter of fact, let me just erase everything and change the color. Let's do purple. All right, so I'm just going to bring that down. So 3x to the third power. Now you see our like terms are on the diagonal. So I have that 3x squared and that negative 6x squared. When I combine those two, I just get negative 3x squared. Again, my x's are still on the diagonal. Negative 5x minus 6x will give me negative 11x. And then, forgot the last arrow. Maybe I erased it. I'm going to bring down my 10 and just have plus 10. And just like the other examples, my answer is just on the side. So I'm going to just finally write that. 3x to the third power minus 3x squared minus 11x plus 10. Final answer. All right, so now you're going to go ahead and practice these two problems. You can pick whichever method that you prefer, either the distributed, using distribution, or the table method. So go ahead and pause the video and then come back when you're done. All right, so I'm going to show you guys both ways, but not for both problems. I'm going to do for question number 1, I will just do the distributive property. And then for question number 2, I will do the table method. All right, so let's start. So I'm going to take my m and I'm going to multiply it by everything inside the trinomial. So m times 7m squared is 7m to the third power. Then m times negative 4m is negative 4m squared. Then m times positive 5 is positive 5m. All right, let me erase everything. And now we're going to do the same thing, but just with the 8. So negative 8 times 7m, we'll just times everything on the inside of the trinomial. So negative 8 times 7m squared is going to be negative 56m squared. Negative 8 times negative 4m is positive 32m. And negative 8 times positive 5 is negative 40. All right, and we're going to go ahead and combine our like terms. So the 7m to the third power is going to be our leading term. There's nothing else to combine that with. Moving on to the m squareds. So negative 4m squared minus 56m squared is going to be negative 60m squared. Moving on to the m's. 5m plus 32m is positive 37m. Done with those, and then our negative 40 is left alone. And this is our answer. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and erase. Maybe I don't have to. All right, so now I'm gonna make a 3 by 2 table because I'm multiplying a binomial by a trinomial. 3 sections and then split down the middle. And I'm gonna go ahead and write my trinomial at top. So 6b squared plus 3b plus 2. And then down the side, 2b minus 2. And remember, order does not matter. So I'm just gonna start and move in this pattern. So I'm starting at this upper right-hand corner and I'm just moving to the left, down, and back to the right. All right, so 2 times 2b is 4b. Moving to the left, 3b times 2b is going to be 6b squared. Moving again to the left, 6b squared times 2b is going to be 12b to the third power. Moving down, 6b to the second power times negative 2, negative 12b to the second power. Moving to the right, 3b times negative 2 is negative 6b. And my last box is 2 times negative 2, which is negative 4. And my like terms are on the diagonal. I'll draw out all of my arrows. And let's bring everything down. So the first arrow doesn't have anything to combine with it, so I'm just going to bring down my 12b to the third power. Negative 6b squared minus 12b squared is going to be negative 6b squared. 4b minus 6b is going to be negative 2b, and we're going to bring down that 4. And like always, our answer is whatever's on the side. And I'm just going to write my answer. 12b to the third power minus 6b squared minus 2b minus 4. And we are done. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know down below.